This is the world's best cricket club, modestly titled, where you do get to meet all the game's greats, many of the stars of both England and other countries. You saw Sonny Gavaskar there, didn't you? Monty's been on, and some of the female players as well. And tonight it's my great friend Paul Farbrace, who I played with for Middlesex and against for Kent. Of course, he's well known not only as a cricketer but also as a very successful coach, both for Sri Lanka, for England, and now for Warwickshire as well, championship winning team last year. So I'm delighted to be able to welcome not only all of you in aid of the Professional Cricketers Trust, we're now up to £8,000 in our fundraising, but also especially to Paul Farbrace. So we'll kill the music there and say welcome to you. Farby, great to have you on.
Very nice to be here. Apologies for being a couple of minutes late. I do apologise for that.
Where were you all that time?
Well, I'd like to say I was stuck in traffic, but I wasn't really. I was just getting upstairs and downstairs. So,
which isn't easy at our age, is it?
It isn't. All those wides, I used to have to try and dive and reach that you bowled.
Has made a bit of a lasting impression.
Yeah, so it's a bit not so easy moving.
God, I mean, have you got? How are you physically, actually?
Not in great shape, actually. Knees are not very good, and hips now starting to go as well. So
same as me then.
It's not great. It was much easier standing up to you because I didn't have so far to move. But standing
well, you
back,
you had to get down very low to the low, skiddy ones, and then up very high for the serious bouncers, though.
Yeah, you didn't bowl many bouncers, did you? You were skiddy was the right way of talking about your bowling, wasn't it? I remember one game at Luton that we played Northants at Luton in a 3-dayer and a 1-dayer, and you bowling very well there. Using your change of pace.
I'm pretty sure you were standing up actually.
Well, I was
pitch.
actually almost stood in front rather than standing up. It was a bit slow, that pitch.
That's amazing. That's the place to be.
I will say very quickly, because I have got it. I've got the Panini sticker. I've got the 1983 Simon Hughes Panini sticker here.
Wow.
Which he actually bought. Can you believe it? He actually bought that on eBay.
On eBay. And on the back, it says, I won't read the full thing, but you're saying about Simon's bowling. It says, although not tall, he is deceptively sharp.
But that was 1983. And by the time Farby kept wicket to me, it was about 1993. So probably lost a few miles an hour. And just tell them how much you paid for that, Noughts.
Oh, right. Hold on.
Wasn't it 99p?
It was 99p, and I even threw in the postage.
Well, you see, everyone's going to laugh about the fact that you paid 99p for that, but actually that's 3 times what it would have been in 1983. Because
I've been seen off then, haven't I?
You know, there was a whole tray of Panini stickers on the Middlesex shop counter, and each player had their own little compartment, and I had, my compartment, which was always full, as opposed to Gats or Embers or someone who everyone had bought all theirs, but mine was mine was overflowing, and mine were 20p each. Yeah, so you're lucky. You're a lucky man. You got it for under £1.
£100.
Yeah, Panini stickers. 60 years ago, Panini stickers were founded. Isn't that makes us all feel very old? So Farby, you've just been to Barbados. Nice work if you can get it.
Yeah,
what were you up to there?
Nice little holiday for 10 days, so very pleasant. Yeah, I was due to go away in November, but I ended up going to the T10 tournament in Abu Dhabi as a coach of Team Abu Dhabi. So
how was that?
That's where you need an understanding wife and you keep delaying her holiday. It was really good. It's the first time I've been involved in franchise cricket. Really enjoyed it. Had an excellent team.
Was that Morgs' team?
No, I had Chris Gale in my side. Livingstone was the captain, and we had a very, very good side. Phil Salt, Paul Sterling. We had a good side. So unfortunately, we messed up 2 nights running against Andy Flower's Delhi team, which cost us the chance to get into the final. So we started brilliantly, 5 from 5, beat everyone. 2 last ball finishes, which were fantastic. Danny Briggs hitting a 6 to win 1 game, and Jamie Overton hitting a 6 the next night. So exciting. It's a brilliant format. As I say, it's the first time I've been involved in franchise cricket, and I can see why so many players and coaches enjoy it. It's a good tournament, very well organised, played on good pitches, which was surprising. I think that surprised everybody at the fact that the IPL had been played out there. Then obviously the World Cup was played out there, but we played on very good pitches in Abu Dhabi throughout. So it was a very good tournament.
You've broken the mold, actually, in a way, haven't you? Because not many English coaches get the gigs, those like lucrative IPL and other franchise gigs. It's almost sort of always South Africans or Australians or Indians or whatever. So it's quite good that they, allowed an English coach in, really.
Definitely, and that's where I still trade a little bit off the back of my time with Sri Lanka and winning the World Cup. So there's still people in the world that are supportive of that and see that. I think Peter Moores is heading off to the Pakistan Premier League in a couple of days' time. So that's another English coach going to work in that. I mean, there are English coaches working out there, and Ian Bell was involved in the tournament I was involved with. He was working with Dougie Brown with one of the teams. Paul Franks and Knotts was with me. We also had Sarah Taylor with me, which was fantastic. She was brilliant. So we did have some English input. We also had Lance Klusner as our batting coach, who I kept asking him every night with the big bats and these forms of cricket, how far he'd have hit a cricket ball, because he was one of the best power hitters that I remember watching, but he was far too modest ever to
he did wield a club, didn't he? He did wield an absolute club.
Unbelievable bat speed. And yet you watch someone like Liam Livingstone, and Liam Livingstone goes against everything that you talk about in terms of coaching young players to strike a cricket ball. Keep a good base, both feet on the floor, look to keep your head and shoulders going through the line, all those sorts of things that people talk about. And he literally swings himself off his feet. His back hip comes through with the bat coming through. He almost cleared the main stand at Abu Dhabi, which is an enormous hit. And it just dipped under the roof at the last minute, but it was an enormous strike. But when he hits it, he just commits everything to the ball.
Were you involved with Birmingham Bears when the Phoenix? I mean, when he was playing for them? No,
I wasn't. I mean, obviously, I was at the stadium. I saw a lot of him at the stadium. No, I wasn't. I was involved in helping to recruit the coach initially, which seems like years ago when we first appointed Andrew McDonald. But it's very difficult to do a county role and be involved in the 100. That's quite tough.
Yeah. Tell us about coaching, because I mean, you've been a coach for 15 years at least now, really, and I mean, you've suddenly you obviously had some success with Sri Lanka and England and Warwickshire. Going to coach in the T10, is that how is it different for a coach being a T10 coach? Because obviously you've got a lot of data. In a way, does a coach have more influence the shorter the format?
Well, it's really interesting because the data bit I'll come back to, but I'll take you back to the actual selecting the squad. I went out for the draft in November to Abu Dhabi, literally in and out within less than 2 days. And I was very clear with the owners when I took the job on how I wanted to set a team up. So it was 5 out-and-out batters with a wicketkeeper in that top 5, a sort of a bowler who could strike it at 6, and then changes of bowlers through the rest of the team. So I didn't want 2 bowlers who bowled exactly the same. I wanted to make sure that we had variations in our bowling attack. I wanted a finger spinner because I thought that the pitches would be quite dry and slow. So someone bowling the ball into the pitch would be really effective. So I took Danny Briggs, who played an important part for us. We also obviously had Livingstone in that side as well. So I'd set out how I wanted the team to be set up, how I wanted the best 11 to look. And my view was that you rotate your bowlers and keep competition for your bowlers, but your top 5, you pretty much stick with your best top 5 all the way through, because you want people to go out and play in a really expansive way. And if after 2 games you're dropping people because they haven't got any runs and they played a big shot, you're not going to encourage people to play shots. So I based it on the best top 5. And then I had a couple of spare batters who would come in if needed, and they did. They got an opportunity because of a couple of injuries. But the bowling was to try and rotate the bowlers. 1, to make sure the opposition didn't ever really work out what our bowling was going to be. And 2, to make sure that the captain had lots of variation in the attack. And we always had 6 bowlers, even though you can only bowl 2 overs a piece. It was to make sure we had plenty of variation. So once the owners were happy with my plan, then I selected a group of players to fit that plan. And I was very clear from the start. We had an analyst, who works with Islamabad United, who is absolutely outstanding, renowned across the world. But I said to him, don't bring your computer, because we're not going to be analysing the opposition every delivery. What we will do is we're going to just concentrate our own players. We'll focus on them, and we'll just keep talking to our own players about their strengths. We're not going to worry about the opposition. And I don't care who we're playing, we're only going to talk about us. So our team meetings before games, the game started at 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock. And so if the game was an 8 o'clock start, we would meet at 6:15 in our team room. We'd have literally a 5-minute conversation about the game that night. The team had already been sent to them at lunchtime on a WhatsApp group. And then 10 minutes later, we were on the bus, we were to the ground. We had an hour's preparation time before the first ball. And in that time, it was, we split the coaches up so that there was enough coaching out there to throw balls, hit catches, get people ready. There was no out and out coaching as such. It was literally reminding people of what they were good at. And then off we went and we played the game. So Fidel Edwards, I'll give you an example. Fidel Edwards, 38 years of age, been an outstanding bowler for the West Indies, played a lot of international cricket, franchise cricket. His first game, I thought he bowled a little bit too short. So I said to him, Fiddy, we picked you because you swing the ball. Your stats are absolutely outstanding. You swing the ball. Don't matter how many runs you go for. If you take 2 wickets in your 2 overs, I'll take that every single time. Because if you're bowling the opposition out, you haven't got, this power.
Especially if they've only got 5 batsmen as well.
Absolutely. If every team goes in with 5 or 6 batters, and you get 2 early wickets, happy days. But don't forget, your great skill is swinging the ball. So swing the ball, try and hit the stumps, try and get the LBWs or caught behind. Let's go that way. So we put a slip in to encourage him to swing the ball. And by and large, he did that really, really well. Sheldon Cottrell, left arm swing bowler. His stats in World T20 cricket are the best, bowling overs 1 and 3.
Right.
So again, Sheldon, pick the ball up, swing it, and look to hit the stumps. Don't worry about how many runs you go for. Try and take me early wickets. And that was our plan. And that's what we went in with. So, there's a lot made of stats and data. And I constantly joked with our analyst that he had the easiest job going. I looked across at other dugouts, and there were a line of computers. It looked like a space station, about to launch a missile. It was a rocket going into space. We had notepads, and it was literally make a few notes. Let's convert in. We were 5 from 5, and everybody was like, "How are you doing? How are you doing?" And we said we're simply focusing on what we're good at. And if you're playing 10 overs of cricket, there isn't time to worry too much about stats and opposition.
What we're talking about is sort of overthink. There's a potential to overthink it, really.
Amazingly so. And I listen to podcasts like this. I listen to people talking on radios and television, and I think sometimes I listen. I think, goodness me, I'm in the wrong game. I don't know what they're talking about. And I listen to all these matchups. People talk about matchups. A matchup has been in the game for a very, very long time. If someone's looking to swing the ball to the leg side, you try and get the ball to go away from the right-handed outside edge. If it's a left-hander, you take it away from the outside edge of the left-hander. It's pretty simple. That's what matchups are about. Now, I know there are some that, Chris Gale is a good example in our team. A lot of teams tried to either hit him on the heel or hit him on the shoulder. That was the line and the length that people tried to bowl him. Anything in between with the swing of his bat is going over long on for 6. So yeah, there are certain players that you perhaps make slight amends for, but generally, if you bowl, in Test match cricket, you look to hit the top of off stump, pretty much you're in the game all the time.
Actually, it's interesting you say that, because I remember the Ashes tour of 2010-11, which obviously England won, the Strauss tour, and what's his name? Nathan Lehman had just come on stream then, doing analysis. And I remember seeing a diagram of Mike Hussey with one of those, like a beehive. A beehive, for those who don't know what a beehive is the balls where they would have passed the batsman on the screen, with the batsman in the middle of the picture. And there was strike rates for every area of where the ball was. And the columns, that it was sort of like, if you bowled on his straightish, he scored at like 20 runs strike rate, and if you bowled wide outside off, it was 70 and all that. And they worked out they should bowl quite straight to him, and he got 196 in the first test, because he kept working it through the leg side and pulling and cutting and stuff. And it was only by the time they got to the 4th test and they'd overthought how to bowl to Hussey that Jimmy came on when Hussey came into bat, bowled a perfect line and length off stump, nick off, naught. And I sort of just thought, shit, they were thinking so much about where to bowl to him. They just didn't bowl the right normal place that you bowl to anyone when they first start an innings.
And that's, that don't get me wrong, that there is a lot to be said.
Oh no, I'm not knocking it. There was Nathan's done a lot of brilliant work, by the way, but
he has,
that particular example was not a good one.
Yeah, and look, I'll give you another good example. In 2014, we won the T20 World Cup with Sri Lanka. We had a group of analysts working in India for us, and they would basically send me a report at the end of every game that we played and every game that was played in our group. And they came up with this information. So basically, they would send me a very brief summary of our game and highlight our strengths and our weaknesses in that particular game. And then that would allow me then to plan practice for the next couple of days before our next game to make sure I highlighted any key areas, which I shared with the other coaches. So I had a batting coach, Marvin Atapatu, bowling coach in Chaminda Var. So I shared information with them, which they would then share with the players if they thought it was appropriate. And then what we also got, before we played India in the final, they came up with this fantastic stat that the Indians looked to bat normally in overs 1 and 2 and attacked overs 3 and 5. So they suggested that we bowled our best 2 bowlers in overs 3 and 5. So we bowled Sachi Senanayake, bowled over 3, and Lasith Malinga bowled over 5. And then when we came to the last 4 overs, the suggestion was that the Indians really enjoyed hitting the ball between long on and square leg. That was their real power area.
Dhoni.
So Dhoni. So we actually bowled wide Yorkers outside off stump and bowled as wide as we could our Yorkers. So Nuwan Kulaseka, Lasith Malinga bowled the last 4 overs, 2 overs each. And we set a deep point, a third man and 2 people on the gully line on 1. So we had 4 fielders plus the keeper in that little quadrant, if you like, on the offside. Now, they scored 17 runs off that last 4 overs, didn't hit a boundary, which kept the score down to 150, which we knocked off and won the game. So, there is a case for using analysis, but it has to be very simple, basic analysis. Otherwise, you start to get confused and you start confusing your players. And it also comes down to how your players like to learn as well.
And some are probably better at taking on board all this stuff than others. Listen, I won't command this stage for too long because I'd love to get the our members asking questions, but I've just got 3 or 4 other things quickly to ask you.
No problem.
Quick. Liam Livingstone. Yep. Now, I'm a big fan, right? And I'm not only, obviously, of his batting, I think his bowling's got a lot of potential. I would have had him at the Ashes. And I know he's not ready yet, but could he be a spin bowler for England in Test cricket?
Yes, I think he could. I would have had him in that squad, whether he'd have made the 11. But the reason I'd have had him in the squad is I think that his personality and his nature of the way that he plays the game would have been a really good member of that squad. And I think he is the sort of bloke who could get in and play Test match cricket, because for me, the mentality is more important than the technique. And I know I've said a lot recently about technique, but he has got a good, simple technique as a batter. I think his bowling has improved beyond all bounds in the last 18 months. And the reason I think his bowling's improved so much is experience has allowed him now to work out how to bowl in different situations. So when he first started bowling off spin and leg spin, and he came on the New Zealand tour with us as a Test cricketer, and I thought, no, I'm not sure this leg spin, I didn't buy it. I thought it was just a bit of a bit nonsense. But actually, it's really, really improved. And he said he's worked with Carl Crowe at Lancashire. He's really developed, but I think more importantly, he's developed mentally, which allows him now to actually know how to bowl and when to bowl at the right time. So I agree with you. I think he has got the opportunity and the ability to play Test match cricket
if he wants to, I suppose. I mean, by the way, we've had him on the club already. He was out in Dubai at the IPL with the Royals, and I happened to be out there as well. So I had him on one night, and he won the quiz, actually, which is a sort of quiz about himself. So you will see in a bit. But he was very good at that, actually, as well. So anyway, okay, that's one question. Second question, just give us your 2 penneth on England's performances in the Ashes then.
Poor. Simple as that. And, the thing that disappoints me, and I can say this, I can say this very openly and honestly. The thing that disappoints me more than anything else is that we haven't progressed from 4 years ago when I was assistant coach with the team. And I sat watching the wash up of the game in Adelaide, listening to the captain and the coaches talking, and it was virtually the same thing that we'd said in Adelaide 4 years previously. We bowled a yard too short in the first innings. We didn't get enough runs in the first innings. We dropped chances. And if you don't get runs in the first innings, you're constantly chasing the game. And that game 4 years ago in Adelaide, Australia got 400, pink ball game, pink ball test. They got 400, and we came to conclusion we bowled a yard too short in the first innings. Second innings, we bowled out for 106. We chased 350. We should have chased 250. 250 we got 258 second innings. And if we'd have chased 250, I think we'd have won the game. But we'd made it hard for ourselves because we got bowled out for 200 in the first innings. So by not quite getting our lengths right, they got 400 rather than 300. By not giving ourselves a chance, we only got 200 rather than 300, and we chased 350 to win the game, and we lose. And so the frustrating thing for me is I remember saying at the end of the test match in Sydney that having lost the series 4-0, we had to find bowlers who could bowl that slightly fuller length in Australia. And I think one of the biggest differences so far in this series is that the Australian batters have left so much better than our batters have. Because if you bowl a good length in Australia, generally the ball bounces over the top of the stumps. And you have a look at the amount of English batters who've nicked balls that aren't hitting the stumps. And you only defend two things when you're batting. You defend your stumps and yourself. And if the ball is hitting 6 stump outside off stump and you're defending it, why are you defending it? Leave it alone. But you get drawn into the ball because of the bounce of the ball out there. And I don't necessarily think our bowlers actually did bowl that short in Adelaide. I thought, and if you looked at it, that the stats were very, very similar, but they just left better than we did. So the disappointing thing is we're 3-0 down and the Ashes have gone. Very similar to what we did 4 years ago. 3-0 down after Perth. The Ashes have gone. You then start talking about what you need to do. You need to get bowlers who can get the ball to bounce off a good length. You need to make sure that you catch your catches in the slip, because that's absolutely vital out there. And the third thing is you need to get runs in the first innings. Now, it's the same thing that we did 4 years ago. So my frustrations are that we haven't learned from 4 years ago. So, I'm not being critical of this current group, because I think I'm just as responsible and I'm just as disappointed now as I was 4 years ago, because it's a horrible place to go and play when you lose. It's a fantastic place to win. It's a horrible place to go and lose.
You could say, and I'll take all that on board. You could say that if they've left better than us, therefore the bowler should bowl even fuller then. Because if they're leaving the ball, but that means it's still missing the stats. Means it's missing the stumps.
But I don't think our bowlers have bowled that differently to their bowlers. As I say, I think they have just left the ball far better than we have. And the other thing in Australia, if you bowl to hit, the middle of the stumps in Australia, you're bowling a half volley because of the bounce of the ball. So generally, a lot of dismissals in Australia are caught behind the court slip. And you're looking to just keep challenging the real top of off stump and make sure that you're tight with your line and tight with your length in terms of hitting the top of off stump. And if you do that, in the end, people actually get fed up and they do nick the ball. And if you think about it, the people that score runs in Australia, and English batsmen that have scored runs in Australia consistently, have been people who can pull and cut. And if you play half-hearted angle bat shots, you're always nicking off. You think when Vaughan got runs, he pulled and cut brilliantly. When Cook got all his runs, he pulled and cut brilliantly. You look at the Australian batters that are getting runs in this series.
Smith hasn't got a front leg. Smith doesn't go forward at all, does he? When he does, he looks a bit shit, actually.
He never has done. I mean, Smith played for me at Kent as a 17-year-old, and we tried to sign him at Kent, but his dad was adamant. His mum's from Kent, so he's a Kent boy. And we actually tried to sign him at the age of 17. And his dad told me back then he will play for Australia. And I said, oh, crikey, well, if he does, you're a better judge than me. But he obviously is a better judge than me, his dad, because he did end up playing for Australia, didn't he?
Very good. Just a final question from me. Coaching. You've had some fairly sort of interesting things to say about coaching generally. And actually, funnily enough, we had Nick Compton on this show last week, who talked in quite sort of strong terms as well about the lack of sort of smartness in coaching and the lack of experience, and the kind of a lot of coaches at kind of junior academy level who just didn't really know what they were talking about. And I don't know. I mean, what's your take on it? What have you been saying? Kind of give us a bit of a lowdown.
Okay, well, I said that coaching has got lazy in England, and that's what I've been saying for the last few weeks. And I don't think there's enough players playing at the highest level who have got techniques that are consistent enough. And, you know, consistent technique means that you play forward when the ball's pitched up, you play back when the ball's short, you play under your eyes, and you play with the full face of the bat. Now, I think we're seeing too many coaches who that they're spending too much time allowing batters just to go in and play shots, throw their hands at the ball, look to whack it, get a nice 30, get out. Well played. Did you enjoy that? Yeah, well done. That's great fun. But the best players in the world have the best techniques. Virat Kohli, Kane Williamson, Joe Root. It's no surprise that Joe Root is scoring the most runs for England. I know he hasn't got 100, but he is scoring the most runs for England consistently around the world. 1,000 runs in front of anybody else in the England team. Why? Because he plays back when it's short, he plays forward when it's pitched up, he plays the ball under his eyes. Think about all the best players in the world. When they first go in, where do they score their runs? Joe Root, Kane Williamson, Virat Kohli, they score square of the wicket on the offside or just behind square because they let the ball come under their eyes, they play it under their eyes, it hits a soft bat and it goes out onto the offside. And that's where they score their runs. When Joe Root is playing well, he square cuts, he square drives, and he punches off the back foot brilliantly. That's when you know he's playing well. When Joe Root isn't playing quite so well, the ball's hitting him on the pad because he's falling over too much to the offside. So I think, you know, and you look at so many of our batters at the moment, they're looking to score their runs very quickly before the ball gets them out. And that's because they're not trusting their defence. And the best players have a solid defence. And leaving is just as important. So when people talk about being positive as a batter, for me, and it means different things to everybody really, being positive means moving your feet to the length of the ball, judging the length of the ball. And if you're looking to get yourself in a good position to play an attacking drive to a ball and it's not quite there, you can take your bat out the way, you can leave it. You can let your hands just drop on the ball and defend it. So you think about Virat Kohli, who I think is an unbelievable talent. I think he is a sensational player. So what he does, he looks to score off every ball, but he gets himself in a position to score and hit the ball. If it isn't quite there, he defends it or he leaves it. But his weight is forward. He's got a good stride in. His head's over the top of the ball. And that's why he's able to score runs all around the world. That's why Kane Williamson scores runs all around the world. Even Steve Smith, to a certain extent. Steve Smith is a bit like Alistair Cook. He's not a technique you'd say to your 15-year-old son or daughter, copy this player's technique. This is a fantastic technique. But what they both do is they play with a full face of the bat. They hit the ball under their chin, and you can't see an obvious way of getting them out. And mentally, they're so very strong, and they're so very stubborn, and they're so very set in how they want to play. And what concerns me is when you see a batter with his bat coming in from gully and then having to fight his hands to get them back on the line of the ball. It only takes a small movement of the ball in the air or off the pitch, and you're playing with the inside or the outside half of the bat. And the one thing that I was really lucky that I got to chat to Sachin Tendulkar one day, and I asked him, what is the most obvious thing about batting? And he said 100% concentration on the ball. He said, if I have 1% concentration on my feet, my hands, my head, or my body movement, that means I've only got 99% concentration on the ball, which gives the bowler 1% chance of getting me out. And it's simple, you know, and I go back to the Lara Tendulkar debate that we used to have many years ago. Who's the best player? Tendulkar. Why? Because he's got the most simple technique. Lara plays some unbelievable innings, but when Lara went out of nick, he was out of nick for a long time because his technique was so complicated. Tendulkar goes out of nick, he gets back in nick very quickly. Williamson, Kohli, Smith, Root, when they go out of nick, they get back into nick very quickly. Why? Because their technique is so simple. And someone's just flashed up on the screen. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. Forward and back, play under your.
So what do we do about it then? What's the panacea for English batting, which is I've been looking at some sort of potential replacements or potential players for England. Yeah. They're averaging in the mid-30s, and that I'm not saying there's a lot of reasons for that. It could be pitches, it could be early season, and all that sort of thing. But how do we get to creating some better batsmen in Britain? Do you think, England?
I think we need to make sure that our best young players, boys and girls, are really coached properly, and the basics of the game are really drilled into them from a young age. We were very lucky. We had Hanuma Vihari come and play 3 games for us the Indian player. He played in the previous Test match in the South African series.
Yeah.
Now, Vihari, I guarantee he came into the first net at Edgbaston and our net stopped. Every coach just open mouth watching him play. The ball was nipping all over the place, and he just absolutely simple, solid, played under his chin. It was not quite side on, but almost side on, head on the line of the ball, shoulder just inside the line of the ball. And if your shoulder's just inside the line and your head's on the ball, your hands are therefore coming under the line of your head. He played straight, full face. It looked like his bat was about 4 foot wide. It was unbelievable. And everybody stopped and looked at him. Now, you ask him, he was brought up in group coaching. He was grooved through group coaching sessions where you pick the ball up, you pick your hands up, your hands go up over the top of the stumps, they come back down the line of the stumps. And there are too many people that pick their bottom hand picks it up, the top hand gets outside the bottom hand. And you know, anybody there, if you've got a pen or a pencil in your hand, or you've got a bat handle near you, you pick it up. If your bottom hand's outside your top hand, your shoulder automatically is falling away to the offside and your bat's coming through at an angle. If your bottom hand's under your top hand, your shoulder comes into line and you play nice and straight. And yeah, but it's...
I've just broken my earpiece as well, annoyingly.
It's such a simple...
Yeah, I take your point totally, actually. I mean, God, I was going to ask you one more question. Hold on one sec. Sorry. Carry on. But this is a bat from the 1976 County Championship.
Well, look, what you've got there, the full face of the bat meeting the ball is the most important thing that you can do. Yeah. So there have been a lot of batters that have picked the bat up, and Boycott was one of them, that swung the bat out towards gully, but then when it comes in straight. And if your bat comes in nice and straight with the full face of the bat, and as I say, you play under the line of your head, it's so much simpler and so much easier. When you're fighting your hands and your feet, or you've got your back foot pointing down the wicket and therefore your right hip's already open, your bat's automatically coming in from point. And if a bowler gets the ball to move off the straight, it's really, really hard to keep your bat on the face of the ball. So my view, and it is a personal view, is that, you know, the younger age and the sooner we do it, we teach the basics and we get the basics right. And I think what's happened is, with the advent of one-day cricket, T20s, T10s, and you see people playing big shots, what a lot of coaches and a lot of young players miss the point is that the very, very best players have the best techniques. And what they do then, they adjust their game to be able to play.
Do you know who I'm going to give you an example of who does that? Rohit Sharma. Rohit, I mean, look at the way he batted in that Lord's Test. You know, really difficult conditions, but he left the ball and he played it on its merits and he drove the odd shot and he opened the face when it swung and stuff. And then obviously, you know, when he plays in a white ball game, he just kind of plays the same shots, but he just extends his arms and picks it up for 6 or 4. And I thought that was a fascinating exhibition, actually. Rohit Sharma in the Test series last summer, that just showed that if you do have a good basic method, you can play all formats.
And that's a great example to use because, you know, we talk a lot about English players going to Australia and we really struggling with the bounce of the ball. Again, Kohli, you know, Sharma there you're talking about, they come to England. Now, Kohli's first series in England, 2014, we beat India 3-1. He had a really tough time.
He did.
When he came back 4 years later, his technique was unbelievable. His bat wasn't coming in from gully. His bat was coming in a lot straighter. He got himself across to bat on off stump. He didn't start on off stump. He started on middle and moved across to off stump. So he knew where his off stump was, and he just played the line of the stump. And they have a thrower who works with them called Raghu, who has been with the Indian team now for about 6 years.
That's a pasta dish, Raghu.
And Raghu is an excellent coach. He's a fantastic thrower. And I asked him one morning, I said, what has Virat done? He said, sir, before we came, every morning for a month, I went to meet him and threw at him at 7 o'clock in the morning when the wickets were damp. And he asked me to get really close and throw the new ball every day. And some days I just kept hitting him and some days he played and missed. But sir, that's what he did for a month before he came. And that's what your preparation is. And that's the one thing that England have been very unfortunate, that the preparation in Australia has been hampered by the weather. I will give them that. But I don't want to sound like I'm being really critical of this current team, because as I said, I'm just as responsible. You
are responsible partly because you were one of the instigators of, not the instigators, but you were one of the executors let's say, of the white ball phenomenon, and more emphasis on white ball cricket, which obviously culminated in a tremendous white ball success, World Cup, T20 #1 team, and all that, but at the expense of the red ball game.
But you see, I would always argue that we tried to play. We tried to play good Test match cricket as well. I don't ever remember being in a meeting with Trevor Bayliss and Andrew Strauss saying, "I tell you, it would be a really good idea if we were 30 for 3 in this Test match, and let's see if we can drag it back from there." We tried really hard, but we couldn't, and we couldn't find the batters. Now, one of the reasons Trevor wanted to play an Australian style of Test match cricket, which was 2 of the top 3 being quite expensive. And Nick Compton was on last week, and Nick was one of the unfortunate beneficiaries of that way of thinking, because he got left out of the England team because it was deemed that we didn't really want a Nick Compton style batter at the top of the order. We wanted people who could play a more expansive game. And so, that's why I say I am responsible, but equally I'm responsible because I'm working in county cricket. I'm responsible for producing players to the next level. And we're not getting that right, because there are 2 things we're missing in English cricket at the moment. We're missing high quality, world-class spinners, and we're missing high quality, world-class opening batters. But we're playing our championship cricket in April and May. By the end of May, we played our county cricket. Now, until we start playing county cricket during the height of the summer and give our best batsmen the chance, I don't buy the poor pitches bit. I saw Zach Crawley's article the other day, and I heard Zach talking about poor pitches at Canterbury where he plays and other places. Now, I'm 6 miles from Canterbury and I watch a lot of cricket at Canterbury. They're not poor pitches. That they might do a little bit, but they're not poor pitches. County cricket, by and large, the pitches are not poor, and I would defend the groundsman to the hill. There might be 1 or 2 pitches where they've tried to get results to help their players. Well, okay, that's fine. I don't mind that, but generally they're not poor pitches. And actually, the argument I would say back is, if the pitches are that poor and you bat on them, when you then come to play Test match cricket and they're good flat Test match pitches, why is it then that you're not able to score runs on good pitches? So, I think we've got to get off the back of the groundsman and actually start looking at all of us in county cricket and saying we need to work harder at developing our better players between the ages of 11, 12, 15, whatever, give them a really good solid technique, not waiting till they're 21, 22 when it's already grooved into them. And we also need to think about when we play county cricket, because all the time we're playing, 4 games in April where I don't care how good a groundsman you are, how good your covers are, there's always going to be something in your pitches. We would like to think at Edgbaston that we play on the best pitches in county cricket. We have one rule with our groundsman, Gary Barwell. We want defensive nicks to carry to slip. That's the only thing we ever talk to him about. Now, I know nothing about producing a pitch. I know where the wooden bits go and I know where the white lines are painted. But the bit in between, that's his job. That's Gary's job. And he produces fantastic pitches. So all of our championship games this year, all of them bar 1 went to after tea on the last day. And the only one that didn't went to just after lunch on the last day. And even our win against Somerset in the last championship game, we got after tea on the last day of a very good 4-day game of cricket. So, I saw a lot of good pitches played on last year. I really did. So I don't buy this constant bagging of groundsmen producing poor pitches. I just think they need a bit of help when they play. And I think we also need to look very carefully at when we play our county cricket. And the question I would ask is, why have we got so many tournaments in England? Why don't we just make it a little bit simpler and easier for ourselves rather than keep playing lots and lots of different tournaments? That isn't a dig at the 100, because I quite enjoyed watching the 100 last year, but I love white ball cricket, so why wouldn't I?
Right, listen, I'm going to stop. We've got lots of people wanting to ask questions. I've got no idea who's first.
I'll tell you. I'll give you a few.
Thanks.
I'll give you a few. Number one, there is a whole bunch of people ready to ask questions. So I'd say, number one, to the patrons who can ask questions, don't do that sneaky thing of, can I ask my second and third question?
Yeah, we'll just have to keep it to
one.
We
ain't got time for that. I'd also say, Paul, you can keep your answers. You can keep them short as long as you want, but I reckon short's better, or you'll be here till midnight.
I'm not. I'll tell you one thing now. I'm not in any rush to go anywhere.
Oh, well, there you go.
What about the rest of us? Hold on.
Well, I was a couple of minutes late, and Chelsea won their game last night, which I enjoyed watching them beat Spurs. I'm not really interested in Arsenal Liverpool. There's nothing else on, and I love chatting cricket, so I'm happy to stay as long as you like.
Well, midnight it is then. Well, I'm going to bring the Raj. I'll shout.
What a lovely man then. You can host. You can host next week as well. Right.
Niraj is going to be first.
Niraj. Now we've got. By the way, this is a global show. So Niraj is in Mumbai, aren't you, Niraj? Is that right?
Mumbai, actually. It's 2 a.m. actually. So yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, your stage is yours. Good evening to you. Thanks for staying up. We can see the clock behind you. Actually, it says 10 to. Doesn't it say 10 to 2 or something?
10 to 2, exactly. To be exact, to be precise.
Good effort.
But,
right. Anyway, it's good to see you.
It's absolutely good to see you and Paul, and thank you so much. And it's a pleasure talking to you, Paul.
Lovely to meet you.
My question is that, I mean, it's already discussed earlier, but I mean, you guys joined in 2015 with the England team, what they were going to the white ball specifically, and it's changed the game. It has done very well for the white ball team. But in this whole, the red ball is actually going down and down and down. I'm not blaming you guys for that, but if England has to go back to the red ball, we have to cut down the white ball, which was like in 2010 and 11, they were like number one, and which affected the white ball. So how do they get the balance right? I think BCCI in India, I feel we've done it quite well to get the balance right, having the IPL also with us, and still the test team and the white ball is doing good, both of them. So how do you propose, if you do you have two coaches? I mean, one for white ball, one for red ball.
Yeah, listen, I think that's a really good question. And I definitely think you could have two coaches in international cricket. I don't see any problem with that at all. And it's, it's a bit like, any coaching setup, you get criticism for having lots of coaches in your setup, but you're trying to have coaches for every player. I think we could have two coaches, definitely. I think India definitely have got it right in terms of, but in terms of, they make subtle changes between the two teams. They don't make wholesale changes. In terms of that, their bowling attack obviously is outstanding at the moment. That helps them enormously win Test match cricket all around the world. Their batting, as I mentioned there, Virat, has adapted. You've got Rohit, who pretty much, again, has adapted his game. But I think in England, we need to make sure we're giving our players the best chance of success from an early day. And as I say, Vihari is a great example of someone who came through a group coaching system and was taught to play the basics really, really well. I think, we've seen in this series in South Africa, that they have perhaps been found wanting by the bounce of the ball. But actually, there's enough players who scored runs to give themselves a chance. And, I think India, for me, India are the best team in world cricket across all formats. I know there would be a lot of New Zealanders would argue with that, but I think India are the best. I think they adapt better than anybody else. And I think that they've shown that their players learn very, very quickly. And Virat, has obviously his mentality and the way that he plays the game drives his team on. And it'll be interesting to see how they cope with the various teams that he's not captain of. But I think we could easily go with two coaches. That would be my simple answer. Sorry, Norts, that was a long answer for you.
Thank you.
That's absolutely fine. You said we're here till midnight now, so
okay,
whatever.
Job done.
Thanks, Niraj.
Thank you.
Okie dokie. So I think he's got a new haircut. He has. So we're going to bring him on.
Before you do, can you, Catherine Matthews on the chat here? She wants to ask a question.
Well, it is a thing.
We can get her in.
Catherine Matthew isn't Catherine Matthew. Catherine Matthew is actually Jacob in a nom de plume. For some reason,
right.
but it's been identified.
Okay.
It's been identified.
Fine.
But
Right.
don't worry about that.
Anyway,
I'm bringing in Mr. Warwickshire himself.
Oh yes, good. I'm looking forward to this.
So Mike's here.
Mike, big Wokesy fan.
He's ready. He's got a new Wokes haircut.
Yes, massive Wokes fan, obviously. Got my shirt on, my county championship.
Look at that.
Fantastic. Look at that. Brilliant.
In honour of you, Farby.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the part played, and that was brilliant last afternoon. That was in September. But with that being said, my question's more about the T20 team. It seems like it's been a while since we've had any success. We've not been to finals day since 2017, and I live down the road from Edgbaston, a Warwickshire fan. I want to go and see my team with finals day. Is there any sort of? I know we've got a new captain for next season, and I think we've got some really exciting players. Sam Hain, who I don't know how he hasn't been involved for England yet. Chris Benjamin, really exciting players. Is there any focus on that this year? Is there a real focus on it, or
there is? And let me tell you, your frustration at not being at finals day matches mine so much to the point that the last 2 years I've actually not been at finals day, even though I probably should be. I don't like being there watching other teams playing on our ground on finals day and having a great day. And that really is frustrating. So look, I think last year our quarter-final at Kent showed where we're at as a team. We lost 5 wickets to non-spinning spin for 40 runs. And we threw the game away with the way that we batted. We deliberately chased because we knew the ball would skid on, and then we played across the line to spinners. And that shows that our thinking wasn't particularly good. The reason that we've got Carlos as captain isn't because I don't think Will Rhodes is capable. He showed that as captain of the championship side, he steered them to win the championship. But I think what we've tried to do is to give a real focus, and a little bit like we did with England when we had 2 captains. We had one who focused on red ball and one who focused on white ball. So that when Carlos comes into the fold, his focus isn't going to be about how many championship games we've got left to play. What we need to do to make sure we get him through to the end of the season, it's about these next games that we've got to play in T20. We're playing them pretty much in one block. We've got the semi-final, we've got the quarterfinals and semi-finals, finals all in one block, which is so much better. And there is a real focus. Now, the advantage we have also with Carlos, that he lives in England, so he might travel off and do other things around the world, but he lives in England, so he spends a lot of time with us at Edgbaston. And between end of January through to the end of May, when the tournament starts, he will have spent a lot of time with us, a lot of time with the bowlers, and he'll be very clear on his plans, how he wants us to play. So you can see that we're making a real concerted effort to focus on finals day. And both you and our chief executive, Stuart Kane, are very keen that we're there for finals day, and we're actually competing in it and not sat there watching other teams playing at our ground. So I promise you, there was a huge focus on it.
That's brilliant. That's music to my ears, and I look forward to seeing you at finals day then.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to it.
But my daughter was at uni with Chris Benjamin actually, and I mean he's a talent, isn't he? I got to know him a bit. He's pretty useful, isn't he?
He's a serious talent. I mean, and that's where we picked him up through Durham University.
I know. Yeah.
They had a trials day. We sent one of our coaches.
Yeah.
And we picked him up. We played him in our second team. He got 149 off 60 balls against Glamorgan.
I know he did. Yeah.
We signed him, and he got 60 in his first T20 game, and then obviously the next day got signed to play in the 100. Which was
did pretty well in that, and actually, of course, encouragingly, he also got 100 on county championship debut. Didn't he?
He got 50, 60 on debut in the T20, 50 on debut in the 50 overs at Cardiff against Glamorgan. Went off and played in the 100 the next day, and got 100 on debut in the county championship. So it's not a bad start, really, is it?
Amazing.
And he's a bright lad to go with it, with a first-class degree in accountancy.
In management, yeah, business.
So Jacob's in the house, but I will say on the chat, I did notice Will, you see. He's like I don't know if it's Stalky or he's a detective, future tenant. Carlos lives in Oxford. How's he?
He used to. He's recently moved. I'm not going to tell you where he's moved to.
We'll find out soon enough. Right. Here's Catherine, a.k.a. Jacob. He's silent. Silent Jacob. He's been asked to...
Hasn't activated his mic.
He's doing something. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Can you hear me?
Hi, Jacob.
All good.
All right there, Simon. All right, Paul. Great listening to you. Just a quick question, Paul. You mentioned about obviously coaching Sri Lanka, and what I wanted to know was in terms of the dressing room and the mentality. What would you say are the differences between an Asian international team and obviously you've got experience with England? Just wanted to know some a bit of insight on that, please.
Yeah. I've just, of course, Jacob, no problem. I've just seen flash up on the screen that someone's already worked out where Carlos lives. That was unbelievable. Took 30 seconds to get where he's moved to. So brilliant observation. Wow. Look, I'll give you a good example. And I don't know whether you saw in the last few days, Michael Atherton wrote an article about public schools and the
myth almost.
I guess, a bit of a myth around it. Which I find really interesting. Now, I'll give you a great example. Ajantha Mendis, we picked Ajantha Mendis up nets. So when you coach and work in Sri Lanka, every cricketer is based in Colombo. So it's a bit like working with the county team, except you've got 100 of the best players in the country all practicing pretty much at the same venue. So we had the national squad, we had the A team, the under-19s, the fast bowling squad and the spin squad were all practicing at the Ketarama Stadium on a regular basis. It was fantastic. So all of the coaches, we were all together. There was a big open planned office. All of the coaches were together, all the physios downstairs. We had a gym downstairs, and there was this massive net area that we were all practicing at. And we kept seeing this young lad who cycled into practice every day with his boots tied around his neck, who bowled spin. And we managed to get him to come and practice with us before we go into the West Indies for one-day series. And he bowled brilliantly. So we decided to take him to the West Indies. So we took a Jantha there. And as I say, he was cycling into practice. And when we took him to the West Indies, he kept getting all of our best players out in practice. So we played him in the first ODI in Trinidad. He came on to bowl in his first over, and he got Chris Gale out LBW. Simon Towfall gave him out LBW. And every single one of the West Indian players sat in the viewing area, ran inside to the screen to have a look to see what he bowled, because it came up on the screen, right arm over, off spin / leg spin. They didn't have a clue what he bowled. And to be fair, there weren't many in our team either. And he bowled so well. He came back from that tour and played in the one day. As he came back, and he bought himself a little Pooch Maxi moped, and he rode to practice with his cricket helmet as his motorbike helmet, still with his boots. But someone had given him a bat, which he stuck in his bag, so his bat handle was sticking above his head as he rode his moped in. Then we took him to the Asia Cup, and he bowled India out in the final, got 6 for 13, and he bought himself a little car on the back of his success. We then took him in the Test series, and he got 29 wickets in a 3-test match series against India in Sri Lanka. Unbelievable. He broke Alec Bedser's record, I think, which was 26 or 27 at the time. 29 wickets in a 3-test match series, bowled brilliantly, bought himself a slightly larger car, and he bought a house for his mum. His dad had passed away when he was 16, so him and his mum lived upstairs, and his 2 brothers and 2 sisters lived downstairs. And he changed their family's life on being able to play international cricket and the success that he had. Now, that is something that you don't see in England. You know, you don't see too many English cricketers, their life changes completely through playing international cricket. In Sri Lanka, in India, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, the game is so different. The way that the players, it is a way of progressing. Yes, there have been some Indians and maybe some Pakistan cricketers that have come from wealthy backgrounds, and I'm not just generalizing here, but there are so many stories of players that it has changed their life, and it means so much. And that the public response to cricket in that part of the world is just something like you've never experienced. And I'm really keen that every young English cricketer should go to India and Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and learn about the different ways of coaching, learn about different ways of playing the game. The Sri Lankans were very streetwise. They were unbelievably streetwise. They learned how to win games of cricket. They learned how to win situations. They were miles ahead of opposition. And I think a lot of young Asian cricketers at the age of 17, 18, 19, 20 are so far in advance of our young cricketers in England, because they're so much more streetwise. There's so much that they learn so much about the game. And I'll give you another example. We had a lad who played in our T10 tournament who up until 12 months ago had only ever played tape ball cricket in Pakistan, and a lad called Daniel Ahmed, and he played in our T10 side. He played last year in that tournament, and he played for us this year. And this, in the recent Pakistan domestic T20, he was player of the tournament. And he has developed very, very quickly, but he learned his skills playing tape ball cricket on the streets in Pakistan. And that is, for me, is a great skill. Ajantha Mendes, how did he learn? He learned to bowl his carom ball because he bowled with a soft ball with balsa wood bats that they play with in the streets in Sri Lanka. And he learned how to spin a ball off his second finger by getting his finger into the tape soft ball and getting it to spin the other way. Now, that's how he learned to play the game. And there are so many examples and stories of that.
Harris Ralph came through a fast bowling academy competition, didn't he? Harris Ralph.
Yes, yeah.
He won a fast bowling competition. But just to pick you up though, how does that you mentioned the private schools story that Athers wrote here. So how do you think that has a bearing on
Well,
a typical English team?
I think one of the things that we do in this country is that we have too much sort of almost controlled practice, too much controlled learning. And I think one of the great things about a lot of the Sri Lankan youngsters that I used to talk to, that they learnt their cricket through, watching the game being played on television or watching people playing, in the park. They played lots of cricket. They were always playing. And there was a certain amount of teaching yourself. And I think that's what the best players in the world are very good at. A lot of the best players in the world are very good at watching. I've always maintained coaches don't teach players how to play the game. They facilitate the learning. And players watch by watching other players. And they come to you and say, I saw so-and-so do that the other day. How did they do that? Why did they do that? Show me how I can do that. And I think that's one of the things that I found with Sri Lanka, that streetwise, very open to learning, had learned to teach themselves almost, and they became their own best coaches very, very quickly. And they weren't relying on a coach to say how to do it and when to do it. And I think that's probably the biggest difference between a lot of young English cricketers and a lot of young Asian cricketers.
Very good answer.
Phil's ready to ask a question. Oh, he's gone dark. It's very.
Yeah, nothing to do with anything other than the fact there's no light on notes. Mr. Farbrace, do you think there are far too many mediocre cricketers playing cricket at the wrong time of the season, i.e. April and September?
I think we probably have too many county clubs playing first-class cricket, if that's what you're meaning. Mediocre. Listen, I average 15. I can't really talk about people being mediocre. That's why I went into coaching quite early. So I think mediocre is a bit strong. I think we probably have too much cricket played, and I think there's a danger that players fall into the trap of thinking, oh well, I've got another game tomorrow, another game in 2 days' time, and I think that takes the edge off of the games. I think if you play slightly less cricket, you work harder towards, you've got more time to prepare and practice for it. And I think you would have a better product at the end of it. Yes, I think county cricket is played at the wrong times. If we really want to play 50 over cricket, let's play it in April when it's easier to produce 1 day pitch rather than the 4 day pitch. And let's move our 4 day cricket deeper into the summer. I think that's a very simple method that we could do. Do we need T20 and the 100? I'm not sure. I'm sure all of you have got a strong answer on that. We've only had 1 year of the 100. I quite enjoyed it. The one thing I would say about the 100 last year, we had very different audiences at Edgbaston.
Well, it's a marketing tool,
T20
really.
cricket. Well,
yeah, I mean, it's a rebranding of the game to make it attractive and fun. Really, yeah. It's more of it's a marketing tool. Really.
But we definitely had different crowds coming to T20 games at Edgbaston. So, for instance, at the start of the tournament in the 100, there were people were coming in to watch women's cricket and then staying on to watch the evening. By the last game, we had 8,000 people in for the last women's game at home, which is fantastic. Right. I think that the women's game is the fastest growing sport we have. Women's cricket is the fastest growing sport we have in this country. And I think next year, the 100 tournament for the girls will be even better. You'll have more overseas players playing in that. I think there was a little bit of novelty value for the women playing this year. And I think it'll be even better next year. And to have 8,000 people watching was fantastic. And I think we saw more families coming to games for the 100 than we do for T20. We have much bigger and better crowds. And I think, in our local community in and around Edgbaston, we have more people from our community coming to watch the 100 than perhaps we do for T20. So that's something as a club that we need to look at as well.
Of course, the women will also have benefited from being with the men and watching the men's games and mingling with the men. And, there was a lot of that kind of, dual association, wasn't there, between men and women's teams of the same franchise.
Definitely. The coaches were sharing ideas, the players were sharing ideas. I think it was really good. And as I say, the game grew very quickly for the women during the 100 tournament. We've got the Commonwealth Games at Edgbaston this coming summer, which is another chance for us to keep growing the women's game. So we're very lucky that we're going to have the Commonwealth Games followed by the 100. So that's 2 months worth of high quality women's cricket played at Edgbaston. I mean, we played a double header in our T20 competition. So Warwickshire men played on the same day as the Central Sparks. The men played in the afternoon, and we played the women's game under lights in the evening, and we made it our community day for everybody in the area to come in and be part of that day, and it was a fantastic success. And we're hoping to do exactly the same again this year.
Right, I'll just step in and Matt, I want to check, Mr. Farbrace, that you're all right. There's still a lot of questions that you're bearing up to this inquisition.
No problem.
What I will say, for that, there's six more questions on screen. But what I will say, on my own personal, I'll just vouch for it. I did go last summer to the 100 at Edgbaston to see, because I'm down in Somerset, but I went to see Phoenix play the Rockets in the game, and I took my 12-year-old daughter, 11-year-old daughter at the time, and like she'd never been to a sort of big event like that. She absolutely loved it.
Excellent.
It was the day when Smeed.
Norts, can you put your camera on? Put your camera on, please.
Oh, right. Well, no, I'm off the screen. I'm bringing in the. I'm just.
No, I want you to put your camera on now.
All right. Well, it's up. It's on now, isn't it? It's up there. But I'm not on screen. I'm at the top of the screen, aren't I? Something like that. I don't like.
No, we can see you. We can see you. Right, you can go now.
I'm going. Thanks. Thanks.
Okay.
Paul's on the screen.
I wanted Farby to see your hair, actually.
Yeah, it's looking good. It's looking good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to take Mike on toe for toe.
Yeah.
Strong beard action there, Norts, as well. I've got to say.
Yeah, I'm trying to look like
I'm
trying to look like a sporting Viking. That's my plan.
Yeah, that's good skills. And the green screen behind you. I mean, you could have all sorts going on in the background there. You could be in like Asgard and all sorts.
Toilet.
Very good, very good.
You next.
Thank you for. Yeah, so it's me next year, Paul. Great, strong name, Paul. Obviously, liking the name.
Paul's a coach, by the way, Farby. He coaches at Teddington, don't you?
Bit of coaching for the young kids, yeah. And I guess the question I have is a bit of a combination of everything we've talked about really tonight, in terms of batting techniques, leaving the ball, watching players, and the emergence of white ball, etc. And I guess I'm going to pick on someone that Mike mentioned earlier, someone like Sam Hain, who's under your control at Warwickshire. So kind of the crux of the matter, I think, is what does someone like Sam Hain, what would you advise someone like Sam Hain to do for the next 2-3 months before the cricket season starts? Because he's clearly a huge talent. You look at his list day numbers. I think he's played 60-odd list day games. He's scored 10 hundreds. He averages nearly 60, I think, in list day cricket. First class cricket, he's played 70-odd games, averages 37, which is, on a par with the likes of Milan and 6 better than Crawley and Hamid or whatever. So, there's clearly, given the state of this England Test team at the moment, there's opportunities for people like him to put the hand up and get in the side. What does he spend his next 2 or 3 months doing? Does he spend his next 2 or 3 months watching videos of Virat Kohli and how he transfers his weight, how he leaves the ball? Does he develop that side of his game and think to himself, I've got a really good opportunity to get in this Test side. That's my main focus for the next 4 or 5 months before the Test season starts? Or does he get in the nets, practice his ramp shots, his power game, get himself a good 100 contract, look to go in the IPL next year? And I think that's the crux of the matter, isn't it? What does someone like Sam Hain, who's 26 years old, where does he go now? What path does he follow? And that's not just him, I'm picking him as an example, but all people in his position, what do they do now? What's your advice to someone like that?
It's a great question. That really is a good question. I think that there are 2 parts to that. One part, and I hope Sam doesn't mind me telling you this, but Sam went to play in the England squad. When the squads were bloated, he was in the squad against Ireland originally, and he was in a 30-man squad and didn't make it into the 15. And he came back to us and was obviously very disappointed. He thought that with Joe Root being out of that one-day squad at that particular time, it was an opportunity to get him and for him to be that glue, if you like, in England's 50-over team. And I tried to explain to him that his average in one-day cricket is absolutely irrelevant. Ed Smith, when he was England selector, used to talk a lot about Sam Hain averaging 50. Owen Morgan isn't interested in people averaging 50. Owen Morgan isn't interested in someone getting 20 or 40 balls. Owen Morgan wants you to get 40 off 20 balls. And that's the way that England's one-day team is set up. They no longer necessarily look to have that glue in place, if you like. Certainly in 20-over cricket, it's about going in, and if one person comes off in your top 6, then you're going to get a decent score your bowlers can defend. And that was our plan with Sri Lanka. I basically excited our players to the point that if one of our top 6 came off and got a score of 60 plus, we would have a decent score that our bowlers could bowl at. In 50-over cricket, yeah, probably there is there probably are times where you have to be a little bit more cautious. But I think that the days of rebuilding, if you lose a couple of early wickets, have gone. And it's about looking to take the game on, and it's looking to be a bit more expansive. So Sam Hain definitely in the last 12 months with us has definitely taken his game on and become a lot more expansive. In Test match cricket, for him to get in, he's got to score more hundreds in county cricket, and he's got to score big runs. And I think that comes down to then being able to negotiate the movement of the ball early season, which means you've got to be able to leave well, you've got to be able to defend well, and you've got to be able to trust your judgment and your technique. And he is a player who can bat long periods of time. And that's the same with Dom Sibley at Warwickshire. I think Dom Sibley will come again, and I think he will play for England again. The next time he gets back in, he won't come back out. He's been working really hard on his technique. He's been really working hard on his alignment, but he's got the mental strength and the mental capacity to play international cricket. And he's not looking to do something that he hasn't done before, because he's scored runs in international cricket. And I go back to what I said earlier, that the temperament, that the mental makeup of the best players in the world, they are unbelievably stubborn. They're unbelievably set. Alistair Cook is a great example. Throwing at Alistair Cook at Lord's 2 days for a test match, I'd be throwing at him with a dog stick, and I might see something, and I go to wander down the net, and he'd shout down at me, "It better be good." And I pick my ball up and walk back off the other way. He didn't want me talking to him when he was batting. All he was interested in was batting. And it might be later that day or the next day, he might say, "What were you going to say to me yesterday?" And I'd say, "Well, I just thought that your front hip was blocking you off a little bit." "Yeah, you're probably right." "Or I felt your head was just tipping over." "Yeah, it might have been." "Okay." Kumar Sangakkara moved his back foot from middle and leg to middle and off. Never went back, never went forward. It went from middle and leg to middle and off. And by doing that, to face a right arm over bowler, as I said earlier, he got his shoulder just inside the line of the ball. He got his head on the line of the ball. Sangakkara used to practice and practice and practice for hours about leaving the ball, knowing where his off stump was. And if you look at again, I go back, look at the best players know where their off stump is. There's too many of our batters have got into this tangle of trying to bat on off stump because they think that they're already out in the channel that people talk about. As soon as you bat on off stump, you start batting off stump, your movements take you even further out, then you start defending balls that are even wider. So the simple answer to your question, in terms of someone like Sam Hain, is he's got to get the balance right between the two. And that's what our players now, that the balance is 2 days a week, roughly on white ball, 3 days a week, roughly on red ball. But the basics of your game are exactly the same, regardless of the colour of the ball. And it's about getting in good positions, whether you're playing the ramp shot or the forward defensive, it's about getting in the best position to play that ball. And I think at Sam's stage now, for him to go on to the next stage, the only way he's going to get picked for England, consistently scoring big runs and banging out big hundreds. And that's how Sibley got picked. He banged out, I think, 800s in 2019. The selectors had no choice but to pick him. And that's the only way to do it. Don't be in the pack averaging 33, 34 with 200s a year, 300s a year. Rob Yates for us this year got 600s, 5 in county cricket and 1 in the Bob Willis Trophy game at the end. That's what got picked, that's what got him picked to go on the Lions tour. And unfortunately, because of the weather, he didn't really get the chance to push on. But I think he's one who's got a great chance. But I do think that Sibley will come again. I hope that answers your question, Paul.
Yeah, I think the 3 days, 2 days thing is really interesting, actually, because I guess, you go back 20 years ago and that probably wouldn't have been a thing. It would have been, you play one style of cricket in the nets and that's it. And so that merge from, I guess probably full-time practicing the same method to 3 days, 2 days is a really interesting point.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Paul.
Right, I'm going to bring in one of the Hat Brigade. Actually, there's a bunch of they're like the Peaky Blinders gang. So I don't know why. Perhaps we'll find out. But I'm going to bring Will in first. But you'll see there's more than one. There you go. Hello, Will.
There we go. Farby, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Good. I'm kind of in the same boat as you earlier on. I don't really care about Liverpool and Arsenal. Chelsea won last night. I don't really care. Well, I care obviously, but I'm like you. I could talk to you for hours. My question kind of goes back to Paul's one earlier. I'm also currently going through my coaching badges at the minute. And I was just wondering what kind of best advice you'd give to kind of 12, 13-year-olds who do kind of like indoor league cricket as well.
Good question. Well, look, I think that the key to any coach-player relationship is understanding the person. Every player wants something different from you as a coach, and until you know them as a person and understand them, you can't honestly help them. So you can. There's this thing about coaches talk about treating everyone the same. Well, you can treat everyone the same, but you've also got to treat every individual and find out every individual. What is it that excites them? How can you get on the same wavelength as them? Because it's really easy to lose people as a coach when you say that there are certain players in this current England team that like to have 3 or 4 things to think about and worry about, and they like to talk in a bit of detail. There are others that they haven't really, they got no interest in 3 or 4 things. They just want to know everything's going to be okay. And so the only way you'll ever really get the best out of any player you work with is getting to know them. And even if you've got 25 or 30 under 13s or under 14s, you still want to get to know them. You want to get to know their character, their personality. What is it that drives them? What is it that excites them? Why do they play the game? What do they look to get out of the game? Some people are motivated purely, and I'm talking about obviously international cricket. Some are motivated by money, no problem with that whatsoever. Some are motivated by records. Some are motivated by how many wickets they've got, how many runs they've scored, by winning trophies. So everyone is motivated by different things. And as I say, the most important thing is understanding them, understanding their learning style. How do they learn? Do they learn from doing? Do they learn from watching? Do they learn from listening, reading? And find out about the different styles. And it takes a bit of time, but it's definitely worth it. So I think any coach, any level, the key is hooking people in, making it enjoyable. And for some people, enjoyment is about winning. It's not about smiling. Enjoyment isn't about smiling. And you've got your different leaders within groups. I mean, if you ask any 13-year-old, you're playing against a team they played against before, ask them about the opposition, they'll tell you about the opposition. They'll tell you the best player is. They know the best players of the opposition.
Because I know him from school. I played with him. I know him.
They know all that, don't they?
Exactly.
I didn't come close to playing international cricket. I made a bit of a hash of trying to play first-class cricket. But what I have done in terms of my coaching, and I have sort of a bit of a rule that I work to. And it's a phrase that goes along the lines of, they'll never remember what you said, they'll never remember what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. That's something that I work on. So when I'm talking to Sangakkara, Jayawardene, Root, Stokes, Butler, whoever it might be, I'm not telling them what to do. I'm asking them the right questions that they know the answers to that help their game. So I'll give you a good example. Right? I'll give you one example. When I was at Yorkshire, Anthony McGrath used to talk to Joe Root as a youngster about not toppling over to the offside, and used to talk to him about make sure you keep your weight on your heels in your setup, which keeps your head up straight. Now, as he grew and got taller, obviously with like a lot of young players do, their balance goes, their stride goes, their movement goes. And I happened to be in the nets at the Oval one day before the test match, and I saw Rooty getting hit on the pad and playing all around his front pad. He was falling to the offside. So I went and stood behind the net, and there was a slight pause in the bowling, and I said, Rooty, you remember what Mag said to you that day at Headingley about your heels? And he said, yeah, I'm falling over, aren't I? And I said, yeah, you are. And he said, oh, yeah, brilliant, great point. And then started getting his weight on his heels, started hitting the middle of the bat, smile came back, and he played really nicely, finished his net. Now, that wasn't great coaching for me, as in technical input. I'm not going to be telling the world I helped Joe Root. All I did was remind him of a previous conversation 3 or 4 years ago that he remembered, which was vital to him, which allowed him to do that. And so therefore, as I say, I think getting to know your players and knowing when you can input and when you can't input is really, really important. And, young boys of girls 13, 14, 15, that they're no different to those players playing international cricket, men or women in international sport. And they all play for different reasons. They've all got different learning styles. And it's about understanding them as people and helping them as much as you possibly can. And one of the things that when I went to Sri Lanka, I had no affinity with any of the Sri Lankan team. I was this chubby bloke that had turned up from England with red cheeks that they didn't know anything about, at the time. But what I had to do was convince them that I was there for them to help them. And I took a great interest in the Sri Lankan culture. I understood the culture of the country. I understood them as people. and I tried to work out what it meant to them to play for Sri Lanka and what the key things were for them to play for Sri Lanka. And the more that I engrossed myself into their culture and their understanding and showed them that I cared and I was passionate for them, the more they could see that I was there to help them. And I was there to help them be a success and make a success of what they wanted to be. And that for me is really, really important. And that's been something that, has been fundamental for me as a coach. I want to win, but the only time I get disappointed is for players, not in players, because how much sacrifice and detail they put into getting to where they've got to, whether they're 13 or 23 or 33.
And I think that the thing with Joe Root and his head falling over, it's a massive thing because that's the thing for me. As I have a thing with my head and my balance, and now as I've got, I keep on falling over the offside, but now my coach has told me to now stay upright and play straight and everything. But look, seriously, I think that's great. That's answered my question. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Will, and good luck with your coaching. Keep enjoying it.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Any more?
I can keep them coming. There's 4 more, actually. So I'm going to bring Matthew. If you're all right, Paul, is everybody else all right? Let's see some signals from the crowd. I don't. Right, I'm bringing Matthew in now, and he should be with you right now.
Good evening, Paul. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
I'll say thank you for your time. Just obviously with your coaching eye as obviously around the county game, who do you see as the sort of the next generation for the England test team? Sort of names that may not be obviously on the
radar
come to mind straight away, but obviously could possibly be in the next 5 years or so.
Okay. Well, the lad that I've mentioned Rob Yates, who I think is going to be an outstanding player. We have another player at Warwickshire called Dan Mousley, who I think is also going to be an exceptional player. They're very different kids, but I think they're both very exciting. Josh Bohannon at Lancashire was the one who really stood out this summer for me. I thought he was so impressive. Very simple technique, very well organised. Pete Moores used to have this saying when I worked with him, simple is repeatable. And in Josh Bohannon, that's exactly what I see. Someone who's very simple in their movements, very repeatable technique. And I really enjoyed watching him play. I thought he was outstanding. Matt Critchley, who has just left Derby and gone to Essex, impressed me with both bat and ball. I think he's an exceptional talent. Player that I've always admired, Craig Overton. I've always really liked Craig, and no secret, I think, that we tried to sign him last year and he ended up staying at Somerset, which was a great shame. He'd have been fantastic for us. But his brother, Jamie, played for me in the T10 and was absolutely top quality. I didn't realise quite how good a player he was until I actually worked with him. And I think he's someone that will push on over the next year, 18 months. I'd love to say there were more batters. I mentioned Dom Sibley. I think Sibley will come again because I think he's got that mentality. And I know my answer is quite heavily laden towards Warwickshire players, but you'd be surprised if I pick too many from other counties.
You're talking to a pair, so,
Oh, well, there you go. Well, so in your team at Worcester, I think that you've got in young Haynes, I think you've got a player who is absolutely outstanding. And I won't make too much of it because I'll have Giddo on the phone saying I'm trying to poach him. But I think young Haynes looked as good a young player as we played against last year. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. And again, brilliant technique, cope really well under pressure. And that's what you're looking for. People that can play well in tight situations, who read and understand the game. Trevor Bayliss always used to talk to players about smart cricket. And what he meant by that was, what does my team need from me at this moment in the game? Does my team need me to get 35 not out and score some ugly runs? Does my team need me to put my foot down and play a little bit stronger here? Does my team need me to get through this next 7 overs spell and make sure we don't lose another wicket? Does my team need me at number 6 in the white ball game to get 35 not out and actually win the game and see the game home rather than getting 20 and leaving it to somebody else to finish off? And I think in Haynes, you've got someone there who is a smart cricketer who I really like. And also Barnard, I think, is another very talented cricketer you've got there Whether he's got the capability of playing international cricket, I'm not sure. But I think Haynes
with
definitely has.
Ed Barnard, I think it's very much obviously the batting is definitely there. I think from the bowling point of view, it's that thing of he's probably just not quick enough in respect to for red ball. He'd be sort of a bit of a cannon fodder on a very flat pitch.
Possibly, but you never quite know until they get there. As Eddie Jones talks about, it's a bit of a teabag test. You never know until the hot water's poured on them whether it's going to be a nice cup of tea or not. And that's always something when you take them from county cricket to test match cricket. I guarantee you never quite know if they've got the mental capacity to deal with international cricket or not. And I've seen a lot of talented county players play test cricket that under pressure don't cope. And I've seen others that you think, oh, they might struggle, actually do really well at it. And so that that test, if you like, of the next level, you never quite know. But Haynes, I think, is one who I think has got the capability to play international cricket.
What would you do? Thanks for the question, Matthew. What would you do, Farby, about the England's wicket-keeping situation?
Well, I can see why England stuck with Jos Buttler, and I know that there'll be people on here that will be groan when I say this, but Jos Buttler in and around the England team is absolutely phenomenal. He speaks clearly. He is very to the point. He might be that softly spoken, nice Taunton boy that comes across as a lovely kid and everyone really likes him, but there's a real still to him. There's a real winner in there. And that's why captains like having him in their team. But you've also got to score runs and catches to keep yourself in the team. I think Johnny Bairstow at 7 and keeping wicket has got the best out of Johnny Bairstow. And the reason being that he knows he's got 2 bites at the cherry. So if his keeping doesn't go well, he's got his runs and vice versa. And we moved him up to bat at 5 against South Africa a few years ago. And we played him for 2 test matches at 5, and it was quite obvious that he wasn't comfortable. We went back to batting him at 7. The next test at the Oval, he was back to being the happy Johnny that he is. And I think, you get the best out of him there at 7. There's no doubt Ben Foakes is a high quality wicket keeper. And obviously his test match debut in Sri Lanka, he got 100 on debut, got runs in all of the innings in that series. He hasn't got many runs in the last year or so at Surrey. I know he's had a few injuries. He is the best gloveman in the country, bar none. There is no contest on that whatsoever. What should the emphasis? I'll tell you what. I'll give you my. You've got to be able to bat, Yoz. You have to bat, and you can't bat any lower than 7. And we see it every time. Like in this England team now, if Stokes doesn't play in this Test match tomorrow or he doesn't bowl, England are massively unbalanced. So you need to have balance at 5, 6, 7. You've got to have at 5, 6, 7. Someone's got to be able to keep and someone's got to be able to bowl, because unfortunately. If Wokes will probably end up playing in this game and he'll play and bat at 8, that's fine. Wokes at 8 is no problem at all. Wokes can easily bat 8. But Oliver Robinson can't bat at 8. He isn't good enough to bat 8. And if you've got Robinson, Leach, Broad, Anderson, 8, 9, 10, 11, there's no way that works. But in terms of your keeping position, you have to bat no lower than 7 in any team. You're gone are the days of your specialist keeper batting 8, 9 or 10 because you unbalance the team. Unless you've got, in your top 5, you've got 3 people who can bowl. And that's very, very unusual. So I think your keeper's got about 7. And that's where I would go back to having Bairstow at 7 and letting him keep wicket. That's where I would go now. I think Jos's time is probably just about done for now in Test cricket. But I'm a huge Jos Buttler fan. And I can see why people want him in the team, because he just brings so much to your team. Don't forget, he's only averaging 31. It's not like he's averaging 15.
I suppose the trouble is his standards in one-day cricket are so high. You want that repeated in Test cricket.
Absolutely, and I think that's why he gets a bit of an unfair rap, because people expect him to go in and get 100 off 60 balls in every game that he ever plays, and it's impossible to do that.
Sometimes I think with him as well, he's better when he knows what's required. In a one-day game, there's a target, there's a run rate, whereas it's open-ended in a Test match, and I don't know, because he's got so much adaptability. I sort of feel like he doesn't quite worked out how to build a Test innings. Anyway, great. Okay, cool.
I'm here a second. Yes, you do need balance, but not Gary balance. That's not what I was going to say. Right. Very quickly, I'm going to bring Andy on, but a one-word answer for you, Paul, because you're talking about Sri Lanka. I just like to know, Lasith Malinga, introvert or extrovert?
Massive extrovert.
I just thought it was his hair, but he actually is an extroverted personality, is he?
He's quite quiet until you get him going, and once he gets going, he's fantastic. But no, he's an extrovert and legend of a bowler and fantastic man as well. But one of the best team players I've ever had the pleasure of working with. He gave so much to his team, you would not believe. It was unbelievable.
Right, thank you. Here's Andy.
Hi, Paul. Just a quick question. Clearly, yourself and Trevor had a huge amount in terms of delivering that 2019 World Cup success. What are your thoughts on the downgrading of the domestic 50 over tournament in terms of what that will do in the future? Personally, I think we've got a bit of an obsession with 2020. I enjoy watching it, but I think there's too much of it. And it worries me a little bit that we might never win another 50 over World Cup because we haven't got players playing at that highest level domestically in that format.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I had this conversation with a lot of people. This is a strange thing to say. I don't think we need to play 50 over domestic cricket, and the reason being that majority of our players in the 4 years leading up to that World Cup wouldn't have hardly played any 50 over cricket other than international cricket. And you play enough international cricket to be ready for the next World Cup. So between the 2015 and 2019 World Cup, England had 94 ODIs to play. And we worked, and Trevor and I had this same thing with Sri Lanka when we first went there in 2007. We had the 2011 World Cup coming up in India, and we were preparing that team for that 2011 World Cup, which we ended up losing to India in the final. And we went into it saying that we wanted nobody in our squad in that 2011 final who hadn't played a minimum of 30 internationals. And Angelo Matthews was one that we picked for the 2009 T20 World Cup in England, because we worked on the basis that every T20 international we played is a bit of a microwave one-day international. And we tried to give him as much experience as possible in England in that tournament to give him as many games as possible ready for the next World Cup in 2011. And by 2011, he was one of Sri Lanka's best players. And the same thing happened. We identified between 15 and 19 how many games we had and how many games we needed our players to play. And we had a squad of about 20, 21 players that we tried to get them as many games as possible. And that's what allowed us to win the 2019 World Cup. So I don't think you need to play it. And it's a bit like saying, if we need to be better at test match cricket, why don't we play 5 days of county cricket? But we only play 4 days of county cricket. And I don't think we need to play 50 over cricket. And I think that's the one tournament we could bin. From a director of cricket point of view, I really enjoyed the 50 over tournament this year because it meant that all of our staff players, our young players, all got to play first class cricket. And we played against quite a few teams who had overseas players. And we ended up, we'd set ourselves a target of winning 4 out of 8 games, 5 out of 8, and we won 4 out of 8. And so we fell short by 1 game. And we pretty much played majority of our young players. So from that point of view, it was a brilliant opportunity to play them. But in many ways, I think the 50 over game is the one that we either move and play in April, and because it's easy to produce a one-day pitch in April. And play it as a slightly more sort of almost FA Cup style tournament, and perhaps bring in the national counties into it, or we take it out altogether. Because I think the danger is with the 100 being against it, and as you know, we use the 100 as a bit of a benchmark. We're not very good at 20 over cricket, as was highlighted earlier, and as a result, we don't lose too many players to play in the 100. What we want to do is to get like we did with England, where the better we got at one-day cricket, more players got picked to play franchise cricket around the world, and their learnings from franchise cricket, so many more of our players were playing in the Big Bash, playing in the IPL and the Bangladesh Premier League. They were coming back with brilliant ideas, which we were incorporating into our own 50 over tournament from T20 cricket, which allowed us to be a better, more experienced, more rounded team, which gave us a much better chance of winning the World Cup. So, you know, that's where I'm at in terms of 50 over cricket, Andy.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks.
That is interesting. Yeah, cool. Is that it? I think there's 2 quick, but I'm gonna, because they're like a double act. Okay. I'm gonna bring them on together. Okay. I don't know who's going to ask their question first, but we might as well. Well, it's an experiment. It must be Omar. Omar must be one of them.
Of course.
You can go first. You can go first, Pinky Blinder.
Oh, cheers. Cheers, Badger. Hi, Paul. Thanks very much for doing this.
Pleasure.
My question is, do you think Joe Root will step down as captain? And if so, who do you think will replace him? I've got a theory, if you want to know my theory.
Go on, you tell me yours first. Give me a bit more thinking time.
I think we should give it to Stuart Broad.
Why?
I think
Go on.
We should do what Australia did with Pat Cummins, because Stuart Broad's done captaincy before in the T20.
Yeah.
He's got the right personality for it. And I think we should try it as an experiment, because he is a senior player. We're going to lose Jimmy Anderson at some point, and I think Stuart Broad has still got a couple of years left in him.
It's a great answer.
It's a great answer, yeah.
Look, I can't argue with any of that. I can't argue with any of that. Look, I think it's really tough for Joe Root. I think as a captain, a bit like a coach, you have a shelf life. And Trevor Bayliss and I have always worked on the basis that 4 years as a coach is probably about right. As a captain, I think 4 or 5 years is about right. I think Rooty probably started a fraction earlier than I thought we should have done. I thought Alistair Cook should have done that last Ashes rather than Rooty doing that last Ashes early on in his time. That was my personal view. I think Rooty has grown and developed as a captain hugely. He looks to me as though he is still enjoying it. He is still saying the right things. It's a tough one, because I don't want to be one of those people who say, yeah, he should go because the team had played poorly. But I do think that we need to start identifying our next captain. And it might be that, someone like Stuart Broad could be a good answer in the short term to get us through the next 18 months or so. But other than Broad or Stokes, I don't think there's another captain in that England team. When he first came in, I thought Rory Burns would be a brilliant captain. I really like Rory Burns, and I got to know him really well during my time with England, and I thought he had all the attributes to be a brilliant captain in the future. But unfortunately, he's not nailed down in the side, and I think that'd be too much to give him at this time. I don't see another captain in that England team. I really don't. So Stuart Broad, if Rooty decided to step down, could do it. What I hope that doesn't happen is that Rooty stays on because he thinks there isn't anybody else to do the job, and that would be really detrimental for Joe and for the England team. But if he thinks he's the right bloke and he's still got the energy to do it, then I would encourage him to keep going with it.
Thank you. Excellent.
Well, actually, Fobs, my question links in to Omar, actually. Evening. Who would be your pick as the next England coach if they get rid of Silverwood?
Look, I hope Chris Silverwood doesn't lose his job. And I know I've been critical of some of the things. I've already said on here earlier that, we don't seem to have learnt a lesson. The reason I don't want Chris Silverwood to lose his job is that I don't want to see another English coach lose his job a bit like Peter Moores did a few years ago, and we revert back to an overseas coach. That's not to say that I'm against overseas coaches, because that would be hypocritical, having been and worked in Sri Lanka twice. And Trevor Bayliss is a great friend of mine, and I thought did a brilliant job. Andy Flower did a brilliant job for England. But I'd love to see the opportunity for English coaches to be at the top of the game, whether that's football, cricket, rugby, whatever. Would you
then replace him with another English coach? Say, for instance, Peter Moores, who's had that experience, he's got success in the county game now. Would he be, and then have Silverwood back at number 2 to build more? Because the 4-year plan, it seems that there wasn't a 4-year plan. They just did the same template and just carried it. There didn't seem to be this master plan of, we've got 4 years, we're going to build this, we've got the plans in place. It's just not worked at all.
No, I get that, and I understand that completely. And listen, the one thing I would say is that international sport is about winning the here and now. And I think if Chris Silverwood, Ashley Giles, Joe Root had their chance again, I think if you went back 15, 18 months and everyone kept talking about how we were going to be the best prepared England team to go and play in Australia and how important it was to win in the Ashes this time round, and we've almost sacrificed our opportunities. We went 1-0 up in India, and then we changed our team because we're talking about bubble life and all of that, and looking after our players and having them ready for the Ashes. International sport is about the here and now. And one of the reasons that Trevor and I got a reasonably even ride over our 4 years was that we won all our home series. So we didn't lose a home test match series during my time with England. We lost, the last series we lost at home in England before this year was in 2014, which was my first series with Peter Moores. against Sri Lanka. We lost 1-0 in the last game at Headingley. We drew at Lords, and we lost the last game at Headingley when Jimmy got out with 2 balls to go, with Moeen Ali batted brilliantly all day for 100. Now, ironically, I just left Sri Lanka a month before, and I've been preparing Sri Lanka to come and play England in that series, and we batted on damp wickets at 7:30 in the morning in Sri Lanka to prepare to come and play in England. So I was a bit torn when Sri Lanka won that series, because secretly I was sort of
That was all your fault then.
I was quite pleased they won, but at the same time I was, and I will tell you one story. I will share this. I've only shared this once before. Day 3 of that test match at Headingley, one of the Sri Lankan bowlers and I passed on the stairs. He was on his way to the change room and I was on my way back out. And he said, coach, why am I not bowling well? What is it? What is this not what I'm not doing? And I said to him, I can't tell you. I can't, as much as I want to, I can't tell you. I said, but you know the answer. And in the second innings, he got 5 wickets. But I didn't actually help him on the staircase. And after the game, we hugged and laughed about it. But it's, I just want English coaches to succeed in international jobs. And I hope Chris Silverwood carries on. I think there's some really good coaches in English cricket. Mark Robinson for us has done brilliantly. He's won trophies with Sussex, won the World Cup with England women, and he's now in his first year with us has won the county championship. But it isn't always down to one person. I think Paul Collingwood will be an outstanding coach at the highest level. I think he is absolutely brilliant. And it might be that England split the coach, give Chris Silverwood the Test cricket and let Paul Collingwood do one day cricket.
Do you agree with him being Spoons being selector as well? Because obviously they picked the wrong selection. Stuart Broad has basically played on the wrong pitches in Australia.
Well, yeah, look, listen, I think that's the great thing about this game. We can all have debates about selection. There's no question, right? And we could stay on until midnight tonight talking about selection. I don't think the coach should be the sole selector. And under Trevor Bayliss, it got raised a few times. He always enjoyed having a selection panel. So we used to have Angus Fraser, Mick Newell and Jimmy Whittaker as our selection panel. And Trevor liked to have the debate and kick it around the table. Chris Silverwood doesn't see enough of English cricket. He doesn't know about the players coming through. Yes, there might be scouts working, but I think it's very unfair on Spoons to be the sole selector and sole coach. And the other great thing, and I've experienced this as a coach, and when I went before I went to Sri Lanka the first time, I was academy and second team coach at Kent. And I came back to become head coach at Kent. And I had a disastrous 2 years and I got the sack after 2 years, right? So my career hasn't always been fantastic and brilliant and winning things. I had a terrible time. It was my club and I felt terrible. And I got the sack after 2 years. But Sam Northeast was a young player who I gave his second team debut at 15. And I nurtured him through to 17, went off to Sri Lanka, came back having been an assistant coach, became head coach. Sam's in the first team. And after about a month or so, I said to him one day, mate, we're not quite the same. We're not going the same. And he said, I can't talk to you like I used to. I can't come and talk to you about my game anymore because you're now deciding on the length of my contract and whether I play in the team. I can't come and talk to you about those sorts of issues. So international level, if you're the head coach and the selector, players are not going to come and openly talk to you about that because they're not going to say, I'm struggling against the swing bowling. I'm struggling against pace. So I'm a bit nervous about my game. When you're the coach, when you're the assistant coach, you get so much closer. And one of the things I learned very quickly was that every player comes to talk to me when I'm Trevor's assistant, whether Sri Lanka or England, because they want to tell me things and share things. Some things they want me to tell Trev, and some things they want to keep between me and them. And the skill is working out what it is that they want you to tell Trev, that they don't want to tell him themselves, and some things they want to keep to you. But they don't openly go to the head man. And if you're the head man and the selector, that's really, really difficult to do. And I think that's a tough gig for Spoons. I would like to see Spoons stay in the job. I genuinely would, because I think he's a good man. I think he's really well organised. And I think, he's had a really tough 2 years with COVID, but I would like to see him carry on.
So would the change be then to change the structure?
Yeah,
if he stays in the role, does he need to say, I want this, and this?
Well, I would say split the job, have a white ball coach and a red ball coach, and bring back a selection panel. That's what I would do in the first instance.
That's quite a significant change, actually. I'm just one quick question about that. One other question about that. Do you think it helped you that you coached abroad? Because the one thing I've felt about Silverwood is, he's coached Essex and Yorkshire and so on, but he hasn't really worked abroad. And I wonder whether that's, the fact that you worked in Sri Lanka just giving you another perspective might have helped.
I think I would not have got my job working with England had I not worked in Sri Lanka. There's no question. I was Kent's second team and academy coach, and I got the job as assistant coach with Sri Lanka. And I was Yorkshire's second 11 coach when I got the job with Sri Lanka as head coach. Now, I wouldn't have got, there's no way in the world I'd have got a job working with the England cricket team had I not gone aboard and had success with Sri Lanka. And, you know, I got the job with England as assistant coach on the back of Sri Lanka winning the T20 World Cup with me as the head coach. And I don't mean this to sound big-headed, because I really don't mean it in this way, but I am still the only Englishman to win an ICC World Cup. And I'd love to see more. I'd love to see Spoons win the T20 World Cup at the end of this year. I really would. But, you know, I do think going abroad and gaining experience overseas does help you become more rounded in terms of your education and your coaching experience, definitely.
Right. Stop talking. Stop talking. You've done very well. You get a round of applause for that soliloquy lasting an hour and 45 minutes. You've just got one more task now.
Right, okay. And
the task is you have to compete in our quiz.
Right.
Which is 10 questions. And as I said, the winner of the last round was Liam Livingstone, who got 9 out of 10. Very good. Paul Collingwood in a previous round got 10 out of 10. But he's the only one who's got 10. And Cook, Alistair Cook, is the worst. He got 4.
Right, I've still got to beat Cookie.
So you got to beat Cookie. It's called, the quiz is called How Well Do I Know Myself?
Oh, blimey.
It's not psychological, don't worry. It starts with a bit of music. And if you get the answer right, you get. He's got it. And if you get it wrong, you get a. Okay.
I'll keep score, right?
Okay. I'm not very good at that. Right. Question 1. No conferring, no asking a friend. Question 1. On your first class debut, who was your first victim as a keeper?
Gosh. First class debut. Did not count in Pakistan.
That is your first class debut.
Is it? Oh my gosh. I don't know.
Can you remember either of your victims?
No.
The first, okay, I'll give you a slight clue. He was the Pakistan number 3 with the first name Mansour. And you still don't know.
No, I've got no idea. I was that nervous when I made my debut. I mean, genuinely that nervous. My first scoring shot, I could talk you all through that. Mohsin Kamal running down the hill at Canterbury, back of a length, magnificent back foot punch through the offside, inside edge over leg stump for 4 to fine leg.
That's not the question I asked. So the answer is Mansour Akhtar.
Wouldn't have had a clue.
Mansour Akhtar. And you also caught a left-hander as well, Asif Mushtaba as well. Right, okay, 0 out of 1. Question 2. On your Middlesex debut versus Cambridge University, off which bowler did you take your first catch? And I'll give you a very sort of big clue to help you.
It's either Norman or Nelly.
I'll give you a very, very big clue. The person is on this program.
Crikey.
Like here now.
Was it you? I can't believe it was you, was it?
He's got it! It was me. It was Jeremy. I think it was Jeremy Atkinson.
Oh yes, Somerset.
Is it Jerry Atkinson? I think. Yeah, Somerset. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, caught right. Farbrace, bowled Hughes, 0. Yeah.
1 out of 2. This has got a big whiff of Cook about it.
Question 3. Yes, it has. Question 3. From a batting point of view, what was significant about that match? Middlesex against Cambridge. You were playing. From your batting perspective,
that was my highest first class score.
He's got it! Excellent answer. And how many was that?
79.
Very good. You don't get an extra.
Okay. My wife just bought me a cup of tea. Thank you.
She can take part as well if you like. You can get some help if you need it.
Oh, blimey.
Okay.
She's a bit nervous about tomorrow, whether her son's playing in the Test match or not, obviously.
Yes.
So she's pacing the floor, worrying whether
He's bound to be playing, surely.
Who knows?
Tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. What'd she say? I hope so.
Yeah.
Right. Quite good. Good. Well done. 2 out
Sorry.
of 3.
Right.
Okay. Question 4. I mean, you'll have to just guess. For which of your 2 counties did you have a better batting average? For which county did you have your best batting average? Kent or Middlesex?
It's got to be Kent.
He's got it. Correct. Any idea what your average was?
I reckon for Kent it was about 17, and for Middlesex it was about 15.
You do yourself down. It was 21 and 17.
Ooh.
But Kent is the correct answer. Well done. Okay, so that's 3 out of 4. You're doing all right now. You've recovered.
Oh.
Right. Question 5. You took 89 catches in your first cast career. How many stumpings? 8, 12, or 16?
12.
He's got it. Very good. Lucky guess.
No, I knew that one.
You do?
Yeah. 7 off my left knee, 4 off my chest, and 1 actually off with the gloves.
What, 1 off your chest mean what? Ricocheted off the chest
Oh,
onto the stumps?
yeah. 7 off my left knee, ricocheted back off there. 4 off my chest, and 1 I actually took my gloves. So
5 out of 6. Very good.
4 out of 5, technically.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I'm level with Cookie anyway.
Yeah, that was a good answer. Right, question 6. What is your claim to fame as a bowler?
Oh, how long have you got? Well, I apologise, but I do tell this story an awful lot, bowling at the pavilion end, at Lord's, as all great off-spinners have done. And I bowled this ball to Graham Gooch that drifted away, turned, bounced and took the edge and was caught at deep square leg by Michael Roseberry diving full length. I bowled 4 overs, 1 for 66.
He's got it! You should get a bonus for that question answer, really, but I'm not going to give you
Graham
one.
Gooch, #1 in the world at Lord's. You never want to bowl again, do you?
Good story. Good story. Excellent. Right. Okay. Dismissing Graham Gooch. And it was your only bowl ever in a game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
It was that bad. Yeah. Right. Question. Well done. 5 out of 6. Okay. Question 8.
7.
Question 7. What was the result of your first game in charge of Sri Lanka? That's a boring question, really. What was the result of your first game in charge of Sri Lanka?
As head coach?
Yeah.
It was a test match against Bangladesh we won. We won a test match in Bangladesh in my first game.
It was an ODI against Pakistan and you won. So
no. That's actually not true. That's actually Norts.
Yeah. Here we
referee, go. I'm credited with running the series against Pakistan, and Graham Ford was still the coach. I didn't start until the test series against Pakistan, which we won 2-0 in Bangladesh. So Norts, could I have a point for that, please?
I blame the researchers on that.
Research on that one. Thank you.
I blame the researchers on that then. Okay. All right.
Genuine.
All right. You've done You've reviewed it. You've done a DRS on it, and you've won it.
I'll give it that one. When you've only been head coach of a few international games, you do know them pretty well. So that's the only reason I would say that.
Right. Okay.
6 out of 7. This is now strong.
This is very good. Okay. We shouldn't have given him that bloody help. Well, no, actually, we didn't give any help on the first one, did we? Right. Question 8. What was the result of your first game officially in charge of England?
So my first game was the New Zealand Test match at Lord's, which we won.
He's got it! Very good. And that was a good game, actually.
It was a brilliant game of cricket. It was one of the greatest ever. Stokes, 96 and 100.
We were 30 for 4, weren't we? Or
30, yeah, but we always were. As I said earlier, we used to plan for that, so that wasn't a problem, was it? Cook got a massive 150 second innings. Moeen Ali caught the final catch under the balcony at third man to win us the game. And I've never been so exhausted and tired in all my life. I walked out of Lord's that night saying, well, they can't take it away from you. You've been coach of England at Lord's in the test match, so it can't be taken away from you now.
Okay, 7 out of 8, 2 to go. You're doing well. I reckon you might stumble on this one. What strange mannerism did you have as a keeper?
I used to adjust both pockets with my hands and then brush the grass out of my gloves before then placing my gloves into a key position.
Very good. That whole thing of like doing this, brushing your gloves with imaginary pieces of glass. I mean, sorry, grass. Yeah, amazing.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So can I just step in here to say at this point? Obviously, this is a new season, 2022. Last week's first contestant, Nick Compton, got 8 out of 10, didn't he? So if you get half a point or 1 point, you will go into the lead. Just said
fantastic.
Drama.
Right. Final question. What word did you use to describe my Brentford house that you shared with me for a while? Or the sort of setup, my general setup?
Oh my goodness! Well,
there was one.
Chaos would probably be the first thing I'd have said.
You got it. You got it in one. Brilliant.
I also can I very quickly, and I told my wife this story last night when she asked me what I was doing tonight. I said, Yoz was very kind. He let me stay at his house the first year he went to Durham, and I was a bit nomadic as I am. I still live in Kent to this day. I live in Herne Bay now, but you let me stay in your house for one summer, and you warned me the first morning I was leaving to go to Oxford to play at the Parks, and you warned me that there was a lot of speed cameras along that road and to be really, really careful. And you kept telling me, and I said yes, and I drove really carefully that day. Except you didn't take your own advice, because halfway down that road on your way back to Durham, got a knock on your window from a police motorcyclist who told you you'd been speeding. So that's why I always remember sharing your house with you, Yoz, in Brentford. So fantastic, brilliant. So yeah, chaos, definitely chaos.
9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. They don't call you Mr. Meticulous for nothing, do they?
Anybody that's ever watched Notting Hill, it was a bit like a scene from that with the two that there. You were more like Spike than me, I think.
Very good. Anyway, well done. 9 out of 10.
Can I just quickly step in to say...
Exceeded expectations.
Can I just quickly step in to say that schoolboy air from Paul there to say Herne Bay, because that means Will will be turning up at some point soon.
No problem.
One quick thing there is to do before we say goodbye, just to remind you, Simon, is we've got a draw for an NFT, and it makes sense for our guest Paul to actually help with the draw.
If he knew what an NFT was.
Well, I've prepared. I've already prepared, hopefully, because I can somehow, I can bring it up on screen.
So do you know what an NFT is, Farby?
No.
This is it.
Hey, look, so
it's a piece of digital art. We've done 100 Ashes heroes as individual NFTs with a little biog and some stats. And you get a little kind of drawing to go with it.
So
that's the Wilfred Rhodes one.
So a bunch of members have all put a little bit of money in it. So it's basically all we ask for you, Paul, is to pick a number between, and I've written all the names down here on this piece of paper, to pick a number of all the people who've bought tickets. Some people multiple tickets, but they're all down here on different numbers. Could you pick a number between 1 and 8, please?
1 and 8.
Yes,
okay.
1 and 8.
Right, 7.
7. Okay, so that means the winner is Sean Fisher. Sean Fisher wins the Wilfred Rhodes.
Well, you like that actually, because he's from Yorkshire.
He's Yorkshire, isn't he?
He's
so
a Yorkshireman.
Happy. Very happy.
Perfect.
There we go.
And you've got the tea. Farby's got the tea. Final question. Ollie Robinson, you must be absolutely delighted at his progress.
It's been great. I mean, it's been great. It's very tense at times, let me tell you. Particularly if, when I mentioned earlier, I was talking about Craig Overton. Conversations in his house, as you can imagine, like every household about selection, and my wife is quizzing whether house about selection, but look, he's done really well, and we're obviously very pleased that he's for anybody playing the game. That at 16, unfortunately, we took him off our academy at Kent. Well documented, he left Yorkshire, and he had to work extremely hard to get himself back into it. And you know, hopefully he's turning a corner and he's learning his lessons. So watching, but as much for anguish as it is anything else, but it's also nice when he has good days and takes wickets. So that Headingley in the summer just got his 5 for. I said, well, he should come off now. He looks tired, and then got 2 wickets the next over and completely changed. So, but it is quite tough and stressful watching.
It is. It's worse, isn't it? It's worse watching a sibling, a son or a daughter or a stepson or whatever, than playing yourself, isn't it? It's funny. Listen, thank you. That's bloody 2 hours you've been on. So that's a fantastic effort.
Yeah,
much appreciated by everybody here. So, and fascinating stuff as well. So thank you very much. And please feel free to depart.